Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you dismiss what I'm about to tell you as some kind of wild exaggeration or collector fantasy, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Picture this: you're standing in line at the grocery store, fumbling through your wallet for exact change, and you peel out a small copper coin from 1944 that looks like any other wheat penny you've ever seen, dull and unremarkable and worth 1 cent in anyone's estimation, except for one tiny, almost invisible detail that transforms this humble coin into something worth more than a luxury mansion, more than most people will earn in 3 lifetimes, more than a fleet of sports cars and vacation homes combined. Because the 1944 wheat penny we're talking about today has sold at auction for a staggering $7.8 million, and that number isn't a typo. It isn't a rumor passed around at coin shows. It's a documented, verified, authenticated reality that has shaken the entire numismatic world to its core and made ordinary coin collectors scan their old jars and forgotten piggy banks with a trembling, barely contained hope that changes everything about how you think about the coins sitting in your pocket right now. Before you think this is fantasy, understand that the story begins at the San Francisco Mint in 1944, a year when America was deep in the throes of World War II, when the government had made the extraordinary decision just 1 year prior in 1943 to strike pennies from zinc-coated steel rather than copper because copper was a critical war material needed for shell casings and military equipment. So steel cents flooded into circulation in 1943, clunking into cash registers and jingling in soldiers' pockets from California to the Pacific Theater. But then 1944 arrived and the government reversed course, ordering the mints in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco to return to striking pennies in their traditional copper-brass composition. And over 1 billion pennies began rolling off the San Francisco presses alone, each one supposed to be made from recycled brass obtained from spent shell casings collected from military bases and ammunition plants across the country, giving these coins a slightly different alloy composition than pre-war cents and a story baked into the very metal of every single one of them. And that is precisely where something extraordinary and almost impossible happened, something that the quality control inspectors at the San Francisco Mint failed to catch, something that would take decades to surface and even longer to fully appreciate, because scattered among those billions of perfectly ordinary copper-brass 1944 cents was a tiny, microscopic handful of coins that were struck not on copper planchets but on the old zinc-coated steel planchets left over from 1943, planchets that should never have been anywhere near the 1944 coin production line, planchets that were supposed to have been cleared out and disposed of entirely before the New Year's production began. But somehow, in the chaos of wartime manufacturing, in the relentless pressure to produce coins at maximum speed to meet the nation's demand for circulating currency, a small number of these steel planchets found their way into the coin presses and emerged as 1944 wheat pennies struck on the wrong metal entirely. And this is where things get fascinating, because these coins look almost identical to a regular 1944 cent at first glance. They carry the same Lincoln obverse designed by Victor David Brenner, the same 2 wheat stalks flanking the 1 cent reverse inscription, the same mint mark struck below the date indicating San Francisco production. But the moment you bring them near a magnet, the truth reveals itself in the most dramatic and undeniable way possible. A regular copper 1944 cent is not magnetic. It won't respond to a magnet at all. It will sit there passive and indifferent. But a 1944 steel cent, the one worth millions, will leap toward a magnet with unmistakable force, clinging to it the way iron filings cluster around a magnetic pole. And this single test, this simple, almost childlike experiment that anyone can perform in 30 seconds with a refrigerator magnet, is the first and most basic screening tool that separates ordinary copper cents from potential million-dollar rarities hiding in plain sight. But the magnetic test is just the beginning, because numismatic experts require far more rigorous authentication before any coin gets labeled as a genuine 1944 steel cent, and grading services like the Professional Coin Grading Service, known as PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, known as NGC, subject these coins to exhaustive scrutiny that includes examination under high-powered magnification, precise weight measurement to the hundredth of a gram, because a genuine 1944 steel cent should weigh approximately 2.7 grams compared to the 3.11 grams of a copper cent, a difference so slight it's essentially imperceptible in your hand but absolutely detectable on a precision scale, and surface analysis to confirm the zinc coating characteristic of wartime steel planchets, as well as die marker analysis comparing the specific die characteristics of the coin against documented authentic examples, because counterfeiters have attempted to pass off altered coins and plated fakes as genuine steel cents for decades, and the experts know exactly what to look for. The rarity context here is what separates this coin from even the most celebrated of American numismatic rarities, because although over 1 billion 1944 cents were produced in San Francisco, the number of genuine steel planchet errors from that mint is believed to be no more than 2 to 5 examples in the entire world. Not 2 to 5,000, not 2 to 500, but 2 to 5 individual coins, possibly fewer, each one a survivor of 8 decades of circulation, storage, accidental spending, and the random attrition of time that claims most coins before anyone realizes what they're holding, making this arguably the rarest regular-issue United States cent ever documented, rarer than the legendary 1909 SVDB, rarer than the 1914 D. Lincoln cent, rarer than coins that numismatists have pursued across entire careers and lifetimes without success. And this rarity has produced human stories that read like something from a movie screenplay, with stories like a California coin dealer who purchased a small lot of wartime pennies from an estate sale in the 1970s for just a few dollars and found among them a coin that wouldn't photograph the way copper should. A coin that caught the light differently. A coin that sat slightly lighter on the palm than its neighbors, and a subsequent magnet test confirmed it was steel, setting off a chain of authentication and expert examination that eventually resulted in a sale price that transformed the dealer's entire business and retirement prospects in a single transaction that nobody saw coming. Or consider the collector from the Midwest who inherited a battered tin box from his grandfather, a veteran who had carried coins in his pocket throughout the war years and never bothered to sort or examine them, just dropped them into the box when they accumulated and eventually stopped thinking about them altogether, and decades later the grandson, only mildly curious about old coins after stumbling across a YouTube video about wheat penny errors, noticed one penny that seemed slightly different in color, slightly more gray than brown, slightly lighter when balanced on a fingertip against its companions, and a trip to a local coin show produced the kind of stunned silence from the dealer that told the entire story before any words were spoken. Because these discovery stories happen, they are documented, they are real, and they serve as the central reason why every coin enthusiast and curious civilian alike should take an extra moment when handling wartime cents to notice the details that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. The grading of these coins is crucial because condition dramatically affects value even among coins this rare, with a 1944 steel cent in fine condition telling a completely different financial story than one in extremely fine or mint state, and authentication reports from PCGS or NGC provide the certified grade, the weight confirmation, the surface assessment, and the all-important designation of genuine versus altered that the collector market absolutely requires before any serious transaction can take place. Professionals check for specific characteristics including the precise thickness of the zinc coating, the sharpness of the design elements which can reveal whether the die was fresh or worn when this particular coin was struck, the presence or absence of post-mint damage or cleaning that could suppress value dramatically, and the die fingerprints that cannot be faked. Tiny, unique markers left by the specific dies that struck the coin, markers that match documented examples and confirm authenticity beyond any reasonable doubt. The market data surrounding these coins reflects their extraordinary status, with auction records showing that the finest known examples have achieved prices placing them among the most valuable United States coins ever sold, rivaling legendary pieces like the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle and the 1804 silver dollar. And the most exciting part is that some could still be out there in old collections, in estate lots, in the forgotten corners of inherited accumulations where nobody has ever thought to check whether that slightly grayish 1944 penny might be something other than a worn copper cent. Yet caution is essential because the market for this coin attracts sophisticated fakes, including genuine 1944's copper cents that have been plated with zinc or other metals to simulate the appearance of a steel planchet, and these plated coins will initially pass a magnet test, which is precisely why weight measurement is the critical second step, because a plated copper coin will still weigh approximately 3.11 grams while a genuine steel cent weighs 2.7 grams, a difference that a postal scale or jeweler's scale can detect instantly, and which represents the difference between a coin worth millions and one worth essentially nothing. And professional authentication is not optional when the stakes reach this level. It is the only responsible path forward. Compared to other error varieties, this stands in a different league entirely, because while double dies and repunched mint marks are genuinely exciting and valuable finds, they exist in populations of dozens or hundreds of known examples, while the 1944 steel cent stands essentially alone in its category, a category of 2 or 3 or possibly 4 or 5 coins that represent not a production error in the traditional sense but a near miraculous survival of the wrong raw material making its way through the entire minting process undetected and emerging on the other side as something the world was never supposed to see. So if you have 1944 cents anywhere in your collection or tucked away in a jar or drawer, examine them carefully, apply a magnet, weigh them on a precise scale, hold them at an angle in strong light and look for the slightly grayish silvery undertone that steel imparts compared to the warm reddish-brown of copper, because despite the almost inconceivable odds against it, genuine examples do exist, they have been found, they have been authenticated, they have sold for life-changing amounts, and the next discovery could begin with a coin sitting in your own home right now, because the smallest coin carries the biggest surprise, and speaking of surprises, the next coin on our list today is even more remarkable in ways that will make everything we've just discussed feel like only the beginning of this incredible story. Last, consider the 1945 DeWitt penny, a coin that at first glance seems like it should be among the most common and unremarkable pieces in any American coin collection, because Denver struck an absolutely staggering number of pennies in 1945, over 266 million of them rolling off the presses as America stood on the final victorious edge of World War II, copper back in full production after the steel cent experiment of 1943, the nation's manufacturing capacity running at full throttle and producing coins by the hundreds of millions. And yet among those hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary copper cents, a specific variety exists that has commanded prices reaching $6 million at auction, a figure so disconnected from the humble 1-cent face value of the coin that it almost seems like a different universe of value entirely. And what keeps numismatists awake at night is the very real possibility that examples of this coin are still being spent as ordinary pocket change by people who have no idea what they're holding, people who would spend their entire working lives and never earn what that single coin is worth. And that is the breathless, almost unbearable reality of the 1945 Doubled Die Obverse, a coin where the entire process of minting error and rarity converged to create something that collectors have pursued with near-obsessive intensity for decades without exhausting the excitement. The story of how this error occurs begins in the die preparation rooms of the Denver Mint, where the individual working dies used to strike coins are themselves created through a multi-step hubbing process, a process in which a hardened master hub bearing the positive raised design of the coin is pressed into a softer die blank with enormous mechanical force to sink the image into the die metal. And this hubbing process is sometimes performed more than once to achieve a fully defined and sharp design in the die, And it is during these multiple hubbing operations that a double die error can occur. If the die rotates or shifts even a fraction of a millimeter between the first and second hubbing impression, both images are captured simultaneously in the die metal, and every single coin struck by that die from that moment forward will carry the doubled image permanently baked into its design, a ghost impression that cannot be worn away by circulation because it is not a surface characteristic but a structural feature of the die itself. The visual identification of a genuine 1945D Doubled Die Obverse is something that can be seen with a magnifying glass of 10 to 15 power, and the doubling appears dramatically around several key areas of the design, most notably in the date digits themselves where the numerals 1, 9, 4, and 5 show a clear and unmistakable secondary image offset from the primary, almost like looking at text through slightly misaligned 3D glasses, giving each digit a thick, doubled appearance that experienced collectors can sometimes spot with the naked eye under proper lighting conditions. The word Liberty in the obverse inscription shows the same dramatic doubling, with each letter appearing to have a ghostly twin shifted to one side, and the motto "In God We Trust" carries the telltale doubled appearance that no amount of wear or aging can disguise. And this is one of the most crucial distinctions in all of numismatics, the difference between a genuine double die error, which is created in the die itself and represents authentic numismatic value, versus the far more common machine doubling or mechanical doubling, which is created during the striking process itself when the dies bounce or chatter against the planchet, and which creates a washed-out, shelf-like appearance that experts dismiss immediately as damage rather than a true error variety, and which adds essentially zero premium value to the coin no matter how convincing it might look to an untrained eye. The rarity context of the 1945D Double Die is what elevates it into the realm of million-dollar consideration, because although over 266 million 1945D cents were produced at Denver, the specific working die that carried this doubled hub impression struck only a small fraction of that total before being replaced or pulled from service, and the numismatic community estimates that the number of examples with sufficiently dramatic and confirmed doubling to qualify as the key variety numbers somewhere in the dozens at most, possibly fewer, each one a coin that has survived 8 decades without being identified and set aside, without being melted or lost or damaged beyond recognition. With stories like a retired schoolteacher in Colorado who had kept jars of old coins in her basement for 40 years, coins she had accumulated during the 1940s and never sorted through because pennies seemed too trivial to bother with, until her grandson, who had become interested in numismatics through an online community, started examining the jars one Saturday afternoon with a loupe he had bought specifically for this purpose, and found a 1945D cent with doubling so pronounced on the date that even his inexperienced eye recognized immediately that something was different, something was there that absolutely should not be, and the subsequent authentication by PCGS produced a certification that set the family's financial circumstances on an entirely different trajectory than anyone could have imagined. Or consider the bank teller in Denver itself who noticed a 1945D cent among the coins a customer brought in for deposit, noticed it because something about the date looked oddly thick, almost as if the numbers had been impressed twice into the metal, and her growing interest in coins, sparked by conversations with a regular customer who collected Morgan silver dollars, gave her just enough awareness and confidence to set that coin aside rather than processing it with the deposit and a trip to a coin show that weekend produced a reaction from an experienced dealer that confirmed everything she had hoped was true. Grading is crucial here because condition determines whether a genuine 1945D double die trades for $100,000 or approaches the multimillion-dollar figures reserved for the finest certified examples, with PCGS and NGC graders assigning numerical grades on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70 that reflect the coin's state of preservation, and a 1945D cent in MS65. Red, meaning mint state with full original red copper luster and a grade of 65 or better out of 70, represents an entirely different financial instrument than the same variety circulated down to fine 12. Professionals check for the sharpness of the doubling itself, since more dramatic and more separated doubling commands a significant premium over subtle examples, and authentication details include die marker analysis comparing small die scratches, flow lines, and clash marks visible under magnification that are unique to specific production dies and that confirm whether a coin came from the specific doubled die in question versus any later regular die. These are the die fingerprints that cannot be faked, the microscopic evidence baked permanently into the coin during its creation that no forger can replicate convincingly enough to fool a trained expert. The collector psychology surrounding this coin is fascinating because it represents one of the most accessible great rarities. In American numismatics, a coin that could theoretically still be found in circulation or in an old collection without being in a certified holder, unlike some rarities that have been so thoroughly hunted they exist only in known collections, the 1945D Doubled Die maintains a tantalizing discovery potential because its visual characteristics, while unmistakable to a trained eye under magnification, can go entirely unnoticed by someone without numismatic experience, and the collector market has gone wild over recent authenticated discoveries, with intense bidding wars erupting at major auction houses whenever a high-grade certified example crosses the block, and the auction data shows a consistent and dramatic upward trend in realized prices over the past decade as awareness of this variety grows among both seasoned collectors and new enthusiasts entering the hobby through online communities and YouTube channels exactly like this one. The most exciting part is that some examples could still be out there in forgotten jars and old desk drawers and the accumulated pocket change of grandparents who lived through the 1940s and saved coins the way their generation saved everything without ever imagining that a single penny could be worth more than a house. Yet caution is essential because the marketplace for valuable double die cents has attracted sophisticated attempts at deception, including altered coins where someone has attempted to create the appearance of doubling through tooling or chemical treatment, and the detection of these fakes requires the experienced eye of a professional who can recognize the difference between the crisp, three-dimensional doubling of a genuine hub double die and the flat, unnatural appearance of artificially created doubling, because authentic double die errors have a consistency and depth across the entire design that artificial methods simply cannot replicate. Identifying this coin requires only basic tools like a quality 10-power loupe or jeweler's magnifying glass to begin your initial examination, looking for that telltale thickening and separation of the date digits and the Liberty inscription that signals something worth pursuing further. And if you find anything promising, the path forward runs through a reputable coin dealer, a regional coin show, or direct submission to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication. Compared to other Lincoln cent varieties, this stands in a different league, because while there are dozens of documented double die varieties across the century-long Lincoln cent series, the 1945D represents one of the very few that has crossed the $1 million threshold and done so repeatedly with documented auction results to back it up. And new discoveries continue to fuel excitement throughout the numismatic community as collectors share finds and encourage beginners to look carefully at every wartime cent they encounter. So if you have 1945D pennies anywhere in your possession, examine them carefully under magnification before spending them or dismissing them as ordinary copper, because sometimes fortune truly does favor the observant. Check your change, check your inherited collections, check those old jars and coin folders that have been sitting untouched for decades. Subscribe to Error Coins Hub so you never miss a discovery like this one. Hit the like button if this video opened your eyes to what's hiding in plain sight, and drop a comment below telling us what old coins you have sitting at home waiting to be examined, because this community exists for exactly that shared excitement of discovery. And remember that knowledge is the key that unlocks the hidden treasures sitting right in front of you.